Well, now let's move to kind of the key text, because I've kind of deliberately guided the discussion a certain way here. We've already talked about some of the textual evidence, philosophical evidence, and theological allowance for death before the fall view. But now let's get into these actual passages that are used by some Christians to say, well, there can't be any death before the fall because Christ died for death. And that I'm specifically thinking of Romans 5:12 and 1 Corinthians 15:21 and following, where it seems that as a result of Adam's sin, death came into the world. How would you respond to that, Hugh?
Well, both 1 Corinthians and Romans are written by the Apostle Paul, and Paul brings up many different forms of death in his writings. And so it's important when you see these passages to ask yourself the question, death in what context? Death by what definition? And what's wonderful about Paul is he always carefully defines the context of the death that he is speaking about. In both passages, 1 Corinthians 15 and Romans 5, he does that. And I would argue that it's crystal clear that he's identifying human death, distinct from animal death and plant death. In Romans 5:12, he starts off by saying death through sin was introduced through Adam's act of rebellion. Well, guess what? There's only one species capable of the sin. There's only one species that can die through sin. That's the human species. Lions don't go through that experience. Plants don't go through that experience. And just to make sure that there is no confusion on the matter, Paul closes off that verse. Death through sin was visited upon all humanity. He's very careful not to include the plants and the animals in that reference. It's to the human species.
Let me just read that real quick. Romans 5:12. Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, and then sometimes people stop right there. But what you're saying is that the clarifying phrase after that is what's critically to the meaning. And in this way, death came to all men because all sin. And so you're saying there that he's not including animals or plants. He's specifically saying death came to all men because all sin.
Right.